So yeah, I think we can get started on this. So I think this is want to provide what we'll be going over today is just to give you an overview of the specialized pathways. So I think some of you might be like returning candidates, or some of you might be doing level 3 for the first time. So this is a very significant change that has happened to the CFA level 3 program in quite a long time. So just want to provide an overview of what are those key changes and what that means in terms of the exam structure. And to give some insight so I'll first give an overview of those changes. A lot of this already CFA Institute has provided a lot of that information. So this will be basically based on what they have disclosed on the website, as well as they've done a webinar with Rob Landrick, who is the Chief Product Officer for the CFA program. He gave a detailed presentation on this. So I'll be summarizing some of that, as well as what some of the other third-party providers have said about this. Excuse me. I'll also then give some insight into, in terms of some advice in terms of what is the right pathway you need to choose, because I think this is something very different from the other 3 levels, because in other level 1 and level 2, I mean, you don't have any choice in terms of the material that you have to do. But now level 3, for the first time, there is a choice. So what is the preferred pathway for you? I'll give some thoughts on that. Of course, each person is going to be different, but I'll give you some based on what I feel my thoughts are. And also just summarizing some of the frequently asked questions about this, as well as other developments that you can expect in the CFA program in 2025. So let's jump into that. And yeah, we have a fairly small audience today as well. So please feel free to send in any questions via the chat, or do you feel free to unmute and ask if you have any questions on this. Yeah. So first, in terms of the overview of this, so I think I think you're already, probably aware that the main thing that is happening starting from the February 2025 exam is now there's going to be these 3 specialized pathways that you can choose from. So more or less, the current CFA level 3 program, the default option that was given to you was to go down this portfolio management pathway. So if you take the syllabus for level 3, pretty much more than 50% of the content was basically that portfolio management pillar. So that option is still there, but now they have introduced 2 brand new pathways that you can choose from, which is this private wealth and private markets. So one thing that is important is that at the point when you're registering for the exam, you now need to choose which path you're going to take. And depending on that, they're going to register you and send you the relevant material for that. So this is very important to note, because now at the point when you're registering, you need to be clear which is the pathway you're going to do, because you're going to be locked into that, at least for that exam cycle. Okay? And in terms of the exam format, it's going to be similar to what it currently is, in terms of it's going to be a mix of the item set and the constructed response questions. So there's no change there. So those are the 2, that's the main development. So before getting into the specifics of the content of this, I want to provide just an overview in terms of what is some of the rationale as to why they have decided to introduce this. So this is just I'm summarizing some of the content from Rob Langrick's presentation on this. So the rationale is if you take in terms of the where charter holders are working across the finance industry and outside of it. I mean, the CFA program is pretty much equipping you with the tool set to work across across a broad range of industries in the finance field, from investment banking to private equity to venture capital to working in a corporate to even as a financial journalist. There's quite a lot of areas where CFA charter holders go into. But one area they felt where the CFA program, in terms of the content of was a bit lacking, was these two areas they've highlighted in orange and blue, is this private wealth. So, so private wealth management and this private equity. So, I mean, what they've highlighted in green, the portfolio manager is still very relevant. The portfolio management pillar is still a big part of the CFA program. Many people, doing the CFA program, this is what they're hoping to do. Start as a buy-side, sell-side analyst, and then, become like a portfolio manager. So that is still a big part of where CFA candidates and then charter holders go into. But now a growing area is this private wealth and private equity. So they felt the time is right to like do something to have some to augment the program to like cater to that. So at the same time, this is also very much reflecting sort of like the market developments that are happening. So the CFA program in general one key strength of the CFA program is that it's very up to date, and it's continuously they update their content to reflect sort of like the changing market dynamics. So this is also in response to developments that are happening in the broader market. So one is that there's a growing sort of job creation that is happening within within private markets. So there's a shift that is happening, particularly in like developed markets, from like public to like private markets. So even a lot of like the leading like investment banks are heavily like investing in that wealth management function. So there's a lot of like new job opportunities that are getting created there. So a lot of interest in like private markets. The other So the private wealth management role is becoming increasingly more prominent. The other aspect is on the private wealth side. So right now, we've seen like there's been a growing sort of like a growth in like the number of like high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, and even like growing faster than some of the broader economies. So there is a very big sort of demand for like services on various aspects of like helping them to manage that like private wealth. As well as a big change that is also happening is there's going to be a big impending wealth transfer from the Gen X to millennials to across the different generations. So there's a big shift that is happening in terms of wealth transfers, and that's expected to create a lot of opportunities. At the same time, things are becoming much more complex in terms of the private wealth as well. So, for example, like, back when I was doing the level 3 program, this wealth management aspect was there, but it was much more sort of like in a more limited way. In most cases, it was where, the sort of the scenarios that we were dealing with was that, it's say this person is like hoping to save for retirement or to spend for their children's education. What is like the ideal asset allocation for them. But now things are much more complex, and you have people. In Rob's presentation, he was like talking about even like, you have these like footballers and like celebrities, and with like significant amounts of wealth, and they're like looking to like see how they can get into like philanthropy, and to set up those home offices, and to like manage their wealth. So that's creating a lot of opportunities there. So that is one reason that they are going into this. And they felt that at the present CFA program was not really satisfying the CFA program was not adequate to like satisfy that like demand for that. So here what they're showing is that currently a lot of people who go into private wealth or private markets, usually the path particularly in the US, is that you go to like a top ranking school, and a lot of these recruitment happens on the campus itself. So like the large these banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, they would be recruiting at the university itself, and then that's how you get into like this M&A and this private market related activities, and that's how you then progress on that. So now what they're hoping to do with the CFA program through the introduction of these two new specialized pathways is anyone who now wants to pursue that sort of career is now offering an opportunity. So what they're saying is that even if you've not been to one of these like top ranked schools, by doing the CFA program, it can help you to transition from, your focus on like public markets where, maybe you are currently might be working in like sell side analyst or in like a transaction advisory. By doing the CFA program with the specialized pathway, this can now help you to transition to those M&A related roles and then get into like private market focused firms. So that's the sort of like the overall sort of rationale for why they have made this change. Yeah. So with that, want to go into a bit more detail into each of the specialized pathways. So at the end of this, in this slide deck, which will be sharing, with the feedback form, they have given some detailed breakdown of the learning outcome statements for each of the two new specialized pathways. So depending on the time that's available, we can go over those as well. If not, I do encourage you to like go through those in detail, as well as there's a few like sample questions that will give you an idea in terms of the kind of content that you'll be dealing with. But for here, I'll just give an overview, and depending on the questions, we can look at specifics of that as well. Yeah. So this is now overall how the program is going to be structured. So the level 3 program is going to be structured from 2025 onwards. So now 30 to 35% of the study material is going to be the specialized pathway. So when you register for the exam, this is, they're just going to send you that relevant content only. So 30 to 35% is the specialized part of it. So that is going to be either portfolio management, private markets, or private wealth. While the balance, 65 to 70%, that's going to be common for all candidates, regardless of the pathway that you're choosing. So that's what they're calling here the common core. So overall, that is how the program is going to be structured. If we go into a bit more detail in terms of the weightings for each of these. So as I said here, so 65 to 70% is going to be that core material. And this is basically things that are going to be common across, regardless of the specialized pathway. These are things that are going to be common across all three of them. So you have things like asset allocation, so that is going to remain. So a lot of these things relating to portfolio management, that is going to be there. About the various industry factors, how that is going to affect capital markets and expectations. Then about how to construct those portfolios, whether it's equities, fixed income, alternatives. So there's going to be a bit of like these private wealth and things like that are also going to be there. But depending on the specialized pathways, it's going to go into more detail on that. So this portfolio construction, more or less, it'll give you sort of like an overview. And then depending on the pathway, you will then explore those in more detail. Same thing with performance measurement. So that's where you have things like the GIPS standards. Then derivatives and risk management is there, as well as, of course, ethics, which is going to be common regardless of the specialized pathway. So all candidates would be handling that, would be tested on that material. While the pathways are going to account for this 30 to 35% of the material. Okay. So then, and please do interrupt me if you have any questions along the way. If not, just add them to the chat. Yeah. So in terms of so this are the three pathways. So portfolio management, overall, so what we are really, it's a deep dive into that portfolio management. Specifically, you can imagine this is for if you're doing institutional portfolio management. So that is your main focus is on public markets. So that is, equities, publicly traded equities, fixed income, currency and the like. And working at like an institution, so like a large investment bank, or like it's for working for for an institution like a pension fund, or where mostly your mandate is to invest in like public securities and the like. So here what you'll be learning is how to a deep dive into how to construct, manage, optimize, and measure those portfolios. So the focus is very much on like public markets. So that's the portfolio management pillar. Then private markets is where you want, if you want to get into like a general partner. So I think you, once you come to level 3, I think you'll be learning a bit more detail about these general partners and limited partners. But basically for, someone who is like managing those funds from like high net worth or from investors who are looking to invest in private market opportunities. So this would be going into detail about that. So here it will like take you through the entire sort of deal workflow if you're working in private markets, from the deal sourcing stage where you're like discovering these like opportunities to then taking it through, you doing the due diligence and then finally getting up to, making that investment and then finally sort of like exiting from those investments. So that's what private markets is covering. And across all the main asset classes, you'll be looking at the private markets would be the focus for that pathway. And then finally, the private wealth is where your focus is very much on, serving those high net worth clients. And, and the way they have structured this pathway is that it takes you from like, someone who is as a young adult, who is a high net worth client, and seeing what their sort of like requirements, how it differs and how it evolves over time as they progress from the start, when they're like generating that wealth to finally when they need to set up like philanthropic measures, or they want to gift, some of their, or transfer their wealth to like the next generation. So that's what will be covered under that private wealth pillar. So to give a bit more detail on that, so this is what, so these are the specific learning outcomes under the portfolio management pillar. So you can see if you look at the what's listed out here, it's basically covering all those institutional portfolio management functions. So different from private markets where you have where the focus is on private wealth management. Here it's about institutional portfolio management. So you're thinking of things like pension funds and these like, institutionally managed funds, these exchange traded funds. So that's the kind of focus that will be there. So it'll be covering, things like when it comes to income investing, fixed income investing, and about this equity passive versus active, about these different and how to manage those investments. So you'll be looking at things like this yield curve analysis, volatility duration, and these different trading strategies, including like derivatives and FX markets. So that's in a nutshell what the portfolio management area will be covering. So one thing to emphasize is that this is basically the current, so that's what they have said here, content of the existing CFA program. So this is pretty much the, up to 2024, this was what was there in the CFA level 3 program that we're doing. So they have now sort of like carved this out now into a specialized pathway. So if you're sort of like a returning candidate and if you choose the portfolio management path, then it's pretty much going to be very similar. You're not going to see a big difference when you do the exam in 2025. They basically just rearranged the content, but what they're saying is like broadly, it'll be similar to what you have done before. The two brand new ones would be this private wealth and the private market. So private wealth, so these are the readings that are there. So yeah, so like I said, it's taking the way it's structured is that it's taking from someone like a young adult, you're onboarding that person. So first you start with giving an overview about this private wealth, and it goes into sort of like a lot about like things like investor psychology and like how to manage and work with the wealthy. So that would be quite interesting. And then about how to do the wealth planning function, taking into account their specific requirements. And a big part is also about preserving that wealth. So that that goes into a lot about like taxation and things like citizenship, where many of these high net worth individuals, their assets might be like globally dispersed, and then you have things over like say their legal residency, what is like the tax the tax structure for them, as well as you have things, a big focus is also on transferring that wealth. So about the different methods for like transferring, from like, setting up like a philanthropy or like a trust fund to like, different things about gifts and like bequests, bequesting that inheritance, and issues around how to do that in a way that's sort of like optimize in an optimum way, taking into account like the tax factors and things like that. So yeah, so that's private wealth. And finally, private markets. So this is so the way it is structured is that it gives you an overview of all the key steps that are involved in the transaction workflow across the different asset classes, from like equities, fixed incomes to like derivatives, and and these alternative investments like real estate. So it gives you sort of like a full workflow for how each of those markets happen. So the first two readings are more or less giving you like an overview of sort of how those general partner and limited partner firms are structured, how that investment process works. Then, from reading 3 to 7 is pretty much a deep dive into each of those specific asset classes. About how they work in a private market context. And another like growing area they're highlighting is on this infrastructure. So with a lot of developments that are happening with like ESG and things like that, there's a lot of focus on like this infrastructure, investing in like sustainable and like renewable energy. So there is that's another focus, as well as on these private special situations they're talking about. So that include things like countries that are going through like a financial crisis, how to manage these things like distressed debt and like vulture funds and like those kind of things they are focused on. So there's a lot of like interesting like case studies that they use to like highlight the developments in these different markets. So yeah, so that is the overview for each of those markets. Yeah, let me just pause there for a minute and see if there's any questions regarding the syllabus, the content of each of these pathways. You feel free to like unmute yourself or please send your questions via the chat. Yeah, so if there's no questions, then maybe I'll move on and maybe at the end we can take some questions. So, so just to give some, based on this, if I were to give some insight in terms of the, what the right path would be. And of course, this depends on each person, on your individual circumstances. But just based on what I understand from these, the content of these programs, I think this is, I think overall, I would say these are the things you want to consider. One is in terms of, what kind of career path do you aspire to? So that is very important because I think because depending on the path you choose, I mean, it's going to equip you with the relevant skills uh, for that particular career path. So if you're looking to make a transition to like private wealth or like private markets, then those pathways might be more suited to you. So it very much depends on like what your career goals are. So I think that's the most important thing. And I think the other thing is in terms of your familiarity with the materials. So, I mean, we should, so that is, we should also consider that, your current job role. Some of these might all, if you're already working in like a deal advisory role, you're working at like an audit firm or like you're doing like a consultancy or you're working at like a family office, maybe some of these pathways might already be familiar to you. So some of that content might be easier for you to tackle than compared to other parts. So that's also one thing you need to factor in, particularly if you're like very stressed for time. That's another thing to consider in terms of, so the difficulty level of these pathways are going to also vary depending on what level of familiarity you have with it and your level of interest in that. And I think another important thing is in terms of when it comes to first time or returning candidates, is this the first time you're going to do the level 3 program, or are you returning from 2024 or before? I think that's another important thing to consider. I will later give my views on that. But just for now, I think the most important thing to consider is in terms of that career path that you want to aspire to. So this is sort of what the the program has also given in terms of some guidance in terms of what are the kind of roles that if you were to map these different pathways to the particular roles that you can take and the kind of jobs that you can see yourself working in. This is how would frame it. So the bulk of your probably portfolio management is going to be the one that sort of like appeals to like the uh, uh, broadest number of job roles in the market. So currently, if you're working as a sell side or buy side analyst, at a stockbroking firm, or you're working at a uh, at a at a bank, or like in the uh, or or in any research or consultancy role, this is probably, and if you're hoping to like continue on that to grow your skills and become like a portfolio manager, like hedge fund manager or like a strategist, then this portfolio management might be the sort of role for you. So I think for many job roles, that is the most common one and might be the most preferred one to go with. Private markets then would be more like, again, currently, if you're sort of like a um, junior analyst or an associate at like maybe an investment bank, or like where you're involved in sort of like this transaction advisory work, or if you're in an audit firm, or it could be even you're in a corporate, in like the corporate finance team or the strategy team there, and where you're dealing with a lot of these like private transactions, and you're hoping to like grow in that to go into like a GP firm, or be like a equity advisor. Then this might be the most suitable path for you. And finally, private wealth would be, currently if you're like particularly if you're working at a lot of commercial banks or investment banks where you're as an investment advisor, or it could be even you're like a corporate lawyer, and working as or a relationship manager at a bank. And you want to like aspire to like, to work more with like high net worth individuals as a financial planner, so that is where, and hoping to, get into like a private office or like a boutique investment firm, then this, or even a tax consultancy or a legal consultancy firm, then this private wealth might be the path for you to choose. Yeah. Um, so yeah, so that's a bit of my thoughts on it. So if and just to come back to this point about I think I'll address that when we come to the frequently asked questions. I think a lot of the questions you might have might also get covered in that. So maybe let me just go over that section as well, and then we can take any questions. So yeah, so with regard to the specialized pathways, just a few things is that one is in terms of this, so regardless of what pathway that you choose, there's not going to be any distinction on the charter itself. So it's not like it's going to be like CFA, comma, or like colon portfolio management. There's no like, it's not like a degree program where you have like a particular specialization or things like that. There will be no distinction in the chart itself. And the rationale for that is that if you take the overall CFA program, these pathways are going to be a very small fraction of that, because from level 1, level 2, that is common content that everyone does, and level 3, 65 to 75% of the material is anyway going to be common for everyone. So there's not going to be any distinction in terms of the charter that you're getting, regardless of the specialized pathway. So everyone will just be a CFA charter holder. Of course, there's no restriction in you, like, talking about this at an interview, or like putting this on your CV, that saying that, you're a CFA charter holder. And for level 3 specialized pathway, you chose portfolio management. Probably they might, when it comes to the ethics and standards, they might give some guidance in terms of what is the correct wording that you can use in your CVs and things like that. But there's no restriction on doing that. And even in LinkedIn, you can talk about this. And probably they might also be releasing some like digital badges that you can put up on your LinkedIn profile, like similar to what they have been doing, what the CFA program has been doing with like when you pass level 1, level 2, you can now add that digital badge. So they probably will be releasing some digital badges for the different pathways as well. But one thing to remember is that they, from what the CFA Institute has so far said, is that they won't provide a specific verification service for the employer if they were to ask about, what pathway you took. So yeah, so that's something they won't do. But yeah, if the employer asks you, you're always free to like talk about what specialized pathway that you did. Then second thing is about, can you take more than one pathway? So here the important thing is that um, you have to choose the pathway at the point that you register for the exam. So you cannot change that. So once you do that, you cannot change it for that specific exam window, So if you do want to change it, say you have registered for the exam, but you now have like second thoughts, maybe after seeing because, once you register only, they're going to send you the material for that, the full material for that. So at that point, if you have like second thoughts about going with this, then the option you do have is there is this 2 weeks buyer's remorse period. So you can, without any issue, you can cancel the registration and then re-register. And then at that point, when you're re-registering, you can choose a different path. So that is the only option you have if you want to change your pathway, is you have the 2 week grace period where you can change it. But beyond that, you can't change that. The other case, of course, is like if you don't get through the exam, or you had to like if you don't get through the exam, or you're repeating it, then when you're re-registering for the exam, you can choose a different pathway. So that is fine. The other thing to note is that like similar to like the practical skills modules, once you become a CFA charter holder, they have said that they will make these all three specialized pathways available to all the members, as refresher readings. So that's something important to keep in mind, particularly if you're like a returning candidate. So if you've done, if you could not get through the exam this year, or you're like hoping to like take it in, and you're hoping to take it like next year or in the future, then I think I would say, my advice would be it's best to go with that portfolio management path, because that's the material you're already familiar with. You don't need to learn something new. So, just in terms of like, improving on your exam success and getting through, I would say that is, unless you strongly feel that, in terms of you want to make a career change and you want to, it would be great to like, have done the specialized pathway and you want to demonstrate that to the employer. Apart from that, I would say that it's best to like do continue with the choose portfolio management as the specialization, because anyway, once you become a charter holder, all three pathways are going to be, the material is going to be made available. So there's nothing really like lost, from doing that. And especially given that there is no distinction that you get in terms of the CFA charter, whatever specialized pathway that you choose. So that's sort of advice I would give for like, if you're a returning candidate. So yeah. Yeah, so that very much relates to this point as well, about like if you are resitting the exam. So yeah, so this was a question that specifically they asked from Rob as well. And yeah, he said that, there will be very little change if you choose the portfolio management path. Whereas if you choose the private markets, then basically 1/3 of the content is basically going to be new content for you. Yeah. So if you take the portfolio management path, it's just going to be a rearrangement of the content. So, some of the topics are going to, the order and things are going to change, but if not the content itself, there won't be a big change there. Yeah. And yeah, I think another question that when you're asking is about the pass rate. Will that change by the pathway? So from what they have said, the information they have given us is that, they are going to calibrate each level to be similar. So in terms of, the level of, so like the mathematical content that will be there, and, other aspects of it, they're going to calibrate it so that it's similar. So you'll, across the three pathways, it's going to be similar in terms of the difficulty level. And currently, the way they decide on, the pass rate as well is this, what's called this just qualified candidate. So basically so based on that, they see like, they try to like, like decide based on an average candidate's performance, these are the criteria they need to meet. to say that, they have met the bar in order to pass, or if any candidate is below that, then they have failed. So what they said they would do is now they would create this JQC candidate for each of the specialized pathways. There's going to be one that is going to be created, and then afterwards, taking it all together, they will have some calibration process to make sure that that is going to be are going to be standardized across it. So overall, the message is that there's not going to be a difference in terms of the difficulty level and in terms of your ability to like pass between one pathway versus another. So I believe from this, what this also implies is that it's not going to get affected by the number of people who are doing each of the pathways. So it's most likely that most people will choose portfolio management because that's the most relevant for most job roles. But that's not going to affect in terms of this JQC and the passing rate and things like that. From what they've said is that they're going to standardize those. But of course, there are other factors that could affect this. So, like I said, like, depending on your, in terms of from you as an individual, in terms of certain pathways might be more, might be more easier, depending on your level of familiarity and interest in that subject, in that content, you might have an easier time passing certain pathways compared to others. So of course, so because of that, individual pathways, there might be differences in terms of the pass rate because of that. But overall, there's not going to be a difference in terms of the difficulty level and your ability to get through in terms of each level. So yeah, so that's the message that they want to say with regard to the pass rate. Then yeah, and also in terms of the uh, other levels. So I think for the moment, there's no plans to introduce any specialized pathways for level 1 and level 2. And also it's very unlikely they would do that because, I mean, if you take most undergraduate programs or like an MBA program, usually it's in that final year where you have the specialization. So it's quite unlikely that they would introduce specialized pathways for level 1 and 2. So not something to worry about. And yeah, in terms of the mock exam, so what they've said is that everyone, regardless of the pathway that you choose, everyone will be getting the same number of mock exams. So there's no difference there. However, at the moment, there isn't an option to get more mock papers to pay and get more, which they do now have for level 1 and level 2. There is like an extra, like a question bank you can get. But at the moment, there isn't for level 3, but probably in the future, they will be releasing that. Yeah. So yeah, so those are the main FAQs, the additional info they have provided to us. So yeah, does anyone have anything else to clarify on the specialized pathways? Yeah, I'm also just sharing. I got a question. Yeah, so please, if you have any questions, please send it in via the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. So yeah, let me just go through this question from Dhammika. So yeah, I'll just read it. So let's say if someone has done through the portfolio management pathway, but later after completion, he realized that private wealth, private market is interesting in the current market situation. So is there any provision to complete the private market again, or have to do it again through the pathway? So yeah, so Dhammika, so what they've said is that all of this is going to be made available to the members in the form of refresher readings. So like they have currently done that with the practical skills modules as well. So pretty much as a charter holder, you can go through that entire practical skills module on your own. You don't need to like repeat the exam or anything on that. So I think the same thing will happen with the specialized pathways. They will make all that content available to members. So yeah, so you don't need to worry about that. If you need to want to make a career change and you want to go through that material, that would be made available. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions regarding the specialized pathways? Yeah, if there's no other questions, let me move on to another a few more developments that you can expect to happen in like 2025. So just to give an overview of that. So these are some of the changes that have already happened. So I think most of you, I believe, are level 3 candidates. So some of these may not be relevant to you, but just to note, with level 1 and level 2, they're offering more of these question bank and practice questions. So probably, so this is for 2025. So as I said, for level 3, they haven't introduced this yet, but likely from maybe the following year, they might have these question banks and mock exams for level 3 as well. So yeah, so then there's also, so now one thing is that another thing that's happening in 2025 is you also have the practical skills modules. So for level 3 as well, these practical skills modules are going to be applicable. So same way as it is for level 1 and level 2, you now need to complete one of these practical skills modules. There's so specialized pathways to talk about. These are also some other things, again, won't be for level 3 candidates, this won't be relevant. So there's the Bloomberg training is going to get integrated into level 1. And this focus curriculum, they've already done that for level 1. And the others is like expanding eligibility. So I think for level 3 purposes, I think the main thing to note is about the practical skills modules. So apart from the ones that are currently available, which is this financial modeling Python training, there's also a new one that they're introducing in 2025, building on these specialized pathways. So that is this portfolio development and construction. This is a new option that you can choose. So this, I think, would really complement if you're doing the portfolio management pathway, if you're taking that pathway, or I think even like private markets, I think this would like very much complement that. So this is on portfolio construction. So it's about constructing a public market portfolio. So most relevant for like portfolio management. If you're doing that pathway, you can choose this. So yeah, so this is the kind of content that you're going to have here. So it'll be similar to like the standard practical skills modules that you have to do, which is 10 to 15 hours of work. And it will be a series of like videos and like quizzes that you have and these material that you have to go through, and which you can do either before or after you have taken the exam, before they announce before they release the results. Yeah. So yeah, so completion is going to be mandatory for that. And so to summarize, these are the options that you now have available as a level 3 candidate in terms of the practical skills module. So pretty much you have so now you have 4 options to choose from. So yeah, so you can go with whatever is of most relevance to you or what you find most interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so that is the new developer. So apart from the specialized pathways, so anyone who's doing in 2025, there's 2 developments. You have the pathway you need to choose, as well as there's the practical skills module that you need to attempt. So finally, in terms of the takeaways, so this is what I would summarize. So so when it comes to choosing the pathway, as I said, take into account what is the job role, what your current job role is and what you aspire to do, as well as your familiarity with the material is also going to determine, to what extent, how tough the material is going to be, as well as your past experience. So as I said, if you're a returning candidate, my advice is, just to continue with the portfolio management pathway, because that's going to be closest to, what your previous exam experience was as well. And there's no loss to doing that, because regardless of the pathway that you choose, the charter is going to remain the same. And once you become a member, you will have access to the material from the other pathways as well, if you want to do that, but if you're, if this is the first time, and you're very much, currently maybe you're working in like a boutique investment firm, or you want to like get into like a family office, that kind of role, then, private wealth or private markets might be something to consider in terms of those pathways. So yeah, so those are some of the my thoughts on that. And yeah, so these are some of the material that you can like refer to, that the CFA Institute has like provided. And let me out of that just highlight these 2. So you have, so the main information is provided. If you search level 3 specialized pathways, you will find this. So you can see, so this gives like pretty much more details about the specialized pathways. So you can go through that as well as a lot of the FAQs. And apart from that, they have also on the website, you can find this this quiz where you know, if you go through the quiz, it will give you some idea of the kind of questions that you can get under each of the specialized pathways. So yeah, so I think that might, particularly if you're already working in some of these industries, you know, it might, some of these questions might be already familiar to you. So that might be something also useful to check out to get some insight on that. Yeah. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions? Yeah, and do feel free to like unmute and like ask any questions. And also, yeah, so please do, yeah, yeah, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, please do fill out the feedback form, because then you can access this the presentation where you know, I've also given the detailed breakdown of the syllabus for each of the specialized pathways, as well as some of the sample questions that you find when you do that sample quiz. So please go through that if you want to make in more detail, if you want to um, learn about this more before making the decision. So yeah, so keep in mind the registration deadlines for the upcoming exam. And you know, when you're at the point when you're registering, just be clear on, you know, what, be confident in terms of what pathway you're going to choose for it. Just like a, if I were to do like a quick poll now, like based on what we've discussed here, how many of you are sort of like leaning towards like the portfolio management? Uh, Maybe you can like raise your hand if you have that, or just type in the chat. Anyone who is doing the portfolio management one? Okay, Dhammika's doing portfolio management plus portfolio management. Yeah, anyone doing like private markets? I just realized PM might be not be the easiest short form to do that, since we also have private markets and private wealth. But yeah, anyone interested in like either private markets or like private wealth? Okay, after this thinking of private markets, Russia, okay, and private markets, yeah. Okay, quite a good number. And yeah, private wealth, anyone's interested in that? Okay, yeah, no one so far on that. So yeah, so please do go through this material as well as the other material that is there on the website as well before making that decision. And yeah, and also if you all have any further questions, just do let us know. We can, you know, so some of these I might not be able to answer, but we can direct it to like our contacts at CFA Institute if there's any, if you all have any further doubts about the pathways or the practical skills modules or anything else regarding the program. Yeah, so if there's no other questions, I think we can close out the session today then. So yeah, so thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, please do fill out the feedback form where you can access the slides from it as well. So yeah, so thanks everyone for joining.